Conquer your mind, silence the chaos within. There is a war happening right now. Not outside of you. Not in the news. Not in the streets. Not between countries or ideologies or people. The war is inside your head. And most people are losing it. Every single day, the average person fights against their own thoughts, the doubt, the fear, the self-criticism, the replaying of old wounds, the anxiety about things that haven't happened yet, the comparison to people they've never met, the stories they've told themselves so many times that the stories feel like facts. That is the real battlefield. And nobody taught you how to fight on it. Until now. What you're about to hear in this video is not theory. It is not motivational noise designed to make you feel good for 20 minutes before you go back to the same patterns. This is the deep work. This is the real conversation. This is the thing that changes a person, not overnight, not painlessly, but permanently. Stay with me. Every single minute of this matters. Welcome. If you are new here, I want you to know this channel exists for one reason. To give you what most people never get. Honest, deep, practical wisdom about how to actually live. Not how to perform living. Not how to look like you have it together. How to actually build a life that is yours, from the inside out. Today we are going inside. We are talking about how to conquer your mind and silence the chaos within. That word, chaos, is important. Because what most people call their mental life is not ordered. It is not calm. It is not directed. It is chaotic. A storm of competing voices, unfinished thoughts, borrowed fears, old wounds, and noise, so much noise, that the person living inside it cannot hear their own signal anymore. And when you cannot hear your own signal, you cannot navigate your own life. You drift. You react. You follow the loudest voice in the room, and usually, that voice belongs to your fear. This video is about learning to turn down the noise, find your signal, and move from it. Deliberately. Powerfully. Consistently. This is what the Stoics built their lives around. This is what the greatest minds in human history understood that most people in modern life have forgotten. And by the end of this video, you will understand it too. The nature of the mind. Let's start at the beginning. Let's talk about what the mind actually is, and why it behaves the way it does. Your mind is not your enemy. That is the first thing to understand. Your mind is a survival machine. It was built, through millions of years of evolution, to keep you alive. And the strategies it uses to keep you alive made perfect sense in the ancient world. Scan constantly for threats. Assume the worst. Replay dangerous situations so you don't repeat them. Compare yourself to others to gauge your standing in the tribe. Stay alert. Stay vigilant. Never fully relax. In a world where predators were real, where tribes were small, where one wrong move meant death, these strategies were not weakness. They were genius. But you are not living in that world anymore. You are living in a world where the predators are abstract. The threats are social. The dangers are mostly imagined. And yet your ancient brain, the same brain that kept your ancestors alive on the savannah, is running those same programs. All day. Every day. In a world they were never designed for. This is why you lie awake at 3 a.m. thinking about a conversation from 3 weeks ago. This is why your heart races before a presentation even though your life is not actually in danger. This is why you scroll through social media and feel a vague but persistent sense of being not enough. Your ancient brain is running threat detection software in a modern world full of things it cannot categorize as safe. The chaos in your mind is not a character flaw. It is a design feature that has outlived its original purpose. Understanding this changes everything. Because once you stop seeing your anxious thoughts as evidence of something wrong with you, and start seeing them as the output of a system that needs to be updated, you stop fighting yourself and start working with yourself. That shift alone is transformative. But it is only the beginning. The voices in your head. Now let's talk about the voices. Because if you've ever sat quietly long enough to really listen to your own mind, you know it is not one voice. It is many. There is the critical voice. The one that tells you you're not good enough, not smart enough, not ready, not worthy. The one that sounds the alarm when you try something new. The one that compares your worst days to everyone else's highlight reel. The one that knows exactly which words to use to make you shrink. There is the fearful voice. The one that runs worst-case scenarios like a movie on loop. The one that says, what if this fails, what if they leave, what if everything falls apart, what if you can't handle it? The one that makes the possible feel impossible and the uncertain feel catastrophic. There is the voice of the past. The one that replays old failures, old embarrassments, old moments of rejection. The one that says, remember what happened last time? Remember how that felt? Don't do that again. The one that turns memory into a prison. There is the voice of other people. The one that is not even originally yours. The voice of parents, teachers, exes, critics, society, that told you something about who you are and what you deserve, and that you internalized so deeply you forgot it wasn't your own conclusion. And then, quieter than all of these, there is another voice. One you may not have heard in a long time. The voice of who you actually are beneath all the noise. The voice of your real values, your real desires, your real sense of direction. The voice that knows. Conquering your mind is not about silencing all the voices. That is not possible and not even desirable. It is about learning to identify which voice is speaking, understanding what it is responding to, and choosing, deliberately, which voice you act from. This is the practice. This is what the Stoics spent their entire lives developing. And this is what we are going to build together today. The Stoic Foundation. I want to spend real time here, because Stoicism is the most practical philosophy ever developed for the kind of mental mastery we're talking about. But I want to give you the real Stoicism, not the internet version that has been reduced to quotes about rivers and flames. The actual philosophy. The one that Marcus Aurelius applied when he was running the most powerful empire in the world while dealing with plagues, wars, betrayal, and grief. The one that Epictetus developed while he was literally enslaved, with no power over his body, his location, or his physical circumstances, and still managed to achieve a freedom that most free people never experience. The central teaching of Stoicism is this: there is what happens to you, and there is how you respond. And only the second one is yours. Everything outside of you, other people's actions, the economy, the weather, whether your flight is on time, whether someone likes your work, whether you get the job, whether the person you love loves you back, none of that is in your control. None of it. And spending your mental and emotional energy trying to control what you cannot control is the definition of suffering. But your response, your interpretation, your judgment, your choice of how to act, that is entirely yours. No one can take it from you. No circumstance can remove it. Even in the most extreme conditions, the response remains yours. Epictetus said it plainly: it is not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things. This is not a passive philosophy. It is not about accepting abuse or ignoring injustice. It is about understanding that your inner world, your peace, your power, your direction, cannot be handed to you by circumstances, and cannot be taken from you by them either. It must be built from within. Marcus Aurelius wrote his private journal, what we now call Meditations, not as a book to be published, but as a daily practice of reminding himself of these principles. Even at the pinnacle of worldly power, he had to remind himself every single morning: focus on what you control. Do not be disturbed by what you cannot change. Act with virtue regardless of outcome. He had to remind himself. A Roman emperor, one of the most disciplined and philosophically sophisticated men who ever lived, had to remind himself every day. What does that tell you? It tells you this is a practice. Not an achievement. Not a level you reach and then maintain effortlessly. A daily discipline. A daily return to what matters. A daily choice to let the noise be noise and act from your signal. And that is available to every single one of us. The chaos and where it comes from. Let's go deeper into the chaos. Because understanding its sources is how you start to dismantle them. The first source is unprocessed emotion. Most people were never taught how to process emotion. They were taught to suppress it, to perform it, to redirect it, but not to actually feel it and move through it. So emotions from years, sometimes decades ago, are still stored in the body and mind as unfinished business. They surface at unexpected moments, they color every present experience, they create reactions that seem disproportionate to the situation because they're not just responding to the situation, they're responding to everything that situation reminds the nervous system of. The chaos you feel is often not about what's happening now. It's about what happened then, that never got resolved. Healing this requires something most people are afraid to do: sitting with the emotion instead of running from it. Not drowning in it. Not performing it. Simply allowing it to exist, to be felt, to move through you. This is what therapists mean when they talk about processing. It is not complicated, but it is deeply uncomfortable because we spent so much energy learning to avoid exactly this. The second source of chaos is identity confusion. Many people are living someone else's life. Not because they were forced to, but because they never stopped to ask, what do I actually want? What do I actually believe? What actually matters to me, separate from what I was told should matter? When your life is built on values that aren't yours, when you're pursuing success metrics you don't actually care about, maintaining relationships that don't reflect who you are, playing a role you inherited but never chose, there is a constant friction between the life you're living and the person you actually are. That friction is chaos. Getting clear on who you actually are, separate from your parents' expectations, your culture's definitions, your peers' approval, is one of the most important and most neglected work a person can do. The third source is the information environment. You are consuming, right now, every day, more information than any human being in history was ever exposed to. More news, more opinions, more stories, more data, more noise than your nervous system was ever built to process. And here is what almost nobody talks about: most of that information is negative. Not because the world is uniquely terrible right now, but because your brain is wired to pay more attention to negative information. It's a survival feature, and because media platforms have learned to exploit that wiring for engagement. Every time you consume negative, alarming, outrage-generating content, your nervous system registers a threat. It prepares for danger. It floods you with stress hormones. And then the content ends and the threat disappears, but the hormones don't. They linger. They color your perception. They make everything feel slightly more dangerous, slightly more uncertain, slightly more overwhelming than it actually is. The chaos in your mind is partly just the accumulated residue of your daily information diet. You cannot think clearly in a polluted mental environment. And most people are drowning in pollution. How to conquer the mind, the practices. Now we build. Now we go practical. Because the understanding is only valuable if it produces change. The first practice is the morning mind audit. Before you consume anything, before you check your phone, before you open social media, before you let the world in, you spend time with your own mind. 15 minutes minimum. Ideally 30. You sit. You breathe. You write. You ask yourself, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I afraid of today? What do I actually want to focus on? What matters and what doesn't? This is not journaling as performance. This is not writing for anyone but yourself. It is using the written word to externalize the internal, to take the chaos from inside your head and put it on paper where you can look at it. See it for what it is. Name it. And then decide what to do with it. When you keep everything inside your head, it feels enormous. When you write it down, you see that most of it is noise. Most of it is the same fears cycling again. Most of it is things you cannot control. And seeing that clearly, on paper, is one of the most powerful mental clarity tools available to you. The Stoics called a version of this negative visualization. They would sit with their fears, deliberately, calmly, and think through the worst-case scenario. Not to catastrophize, but to defang the fear. To realize, even if the worst happened, I would survive. I would find a way. The fear is bigger than the actual event. The morning mind audit does the same thing. You face the chaos before the day begins. You don't let it ambush you. The second practice is the discipline of response. Between every stimulus and response, there is a space. Viktor Frankl, who survived the Nazi concentration camps and built an entire philosophy from that experience, said this. In that space is your freedom. In that space is your power. Most people have almost no space between stimulus and response. Someone says something provocative, and they react instantly. Something goes wrong and the emotion floods immediately. Something triggers an old wound and the old pattern fires automatically. Conquering your mind means expanding that space. Building it deliberately. Training yourself to pause, even for a breath, even for 5 seconds, between what happens and what you do. This is a practice you build in low-stakes situations first. When you're mildly annoyed, you pause. When you're slightly anxious, you pause. When something small goes wrong, you pause. You choose your response instead of firing automatically. And over time, through hundreds, thousands of small repetitions, that pause becomes available even in high-stakes situations. Even when someone says something that hits a nerve. Even when circumstances go wrong in a big way. Even when the fear is loud and the impulse is strong. The space grows. And in that space is everything. The third practice is thought examination. Not every thought deserves your belief. This sounds simple, but it is revolutionary. Your mind generates thousands of thoughts every day. Most of them are automatic, the product of habit, of fear, of old programming. They are not truth. They are output. And you do not have to agree with your own output. The Stoic practice of thought examination works like this. When a thought arises that causes distress, you do not immediately accept it as true. You examine it. You ask, is this actually true? What evidence do I have for this? What evidence do I have against it? Is there another interpretation of this situation? What would I tell a friend who was thinking this? Most distressing thoughts do not survive examination. They are catastrophizations, exaggerations of risk. They are overgeneralizations. This always happens, when it doesn't always happen. They are mind readings. They think I'm stupid, when you have no idea what they think. They are fortune tellings. This is going to go wrong, when you cannot know that. Examine your thoughts. Not to dismiss your emotions. Emotions are real and valid signals. But to stop giving automatic authority to every thought that surfaces. To be a fair witness to your own mind rather than an uncritical believer of everything it produces. The fourth practice is physical discipline as mental training. The mind and the body are not separate systems. Everything that happens in your body affects your mind. And everything you do to strengthen your body also strengthens the mental qualities you are trying to build. When you do something physically hard, when you push through a workout that your body is telling you to quit, when you wake up early and do the work even when you're tired, when you choose discomfort over comfort in the physical realm, you are building the exact same neural pathways that discipline in the mental realm requires. This is why so many great thinkers, and virtually every Stoic philosopher, emphasized physical practice. Not for aesthetics. Not for performance. But because the experience of overcoming physical resistance teaches the mind that resistance can be overcome. It gives you evidence, lived in your body, that you are capable of doing hard things. The body is the training ground for the mind. If you want to conquer your thoughts, start by conquering something physical. Daily. Consistently. Not perfectly. But consistently. The fifth practice is solitude and silence. You cannot hear your signal in constant noise. But most modern people are never in silence. There is always something playing, something to check, something coming in. The idea of sitting in silence, with no phone, no music, no podcast, no content, feels uncomfortable. Almost unbearable for some. That discomfort is information. It tells you how dependent you've become on noise to avoid what's waiting in the quiet. But the quiet is where the clarity lives. Spend time alone. In actual silence. Not meditating in a structured way if that doesn't work for you, just sitting. Walking without earphones. Driving without the radio. Eating without looking at a screen. Let your mind have the space to settle. Let the noise dissipate. Let what is underneath, your actual thoughts, your actual feelings, your actual desires, rise to the surface. You will be surprised by what you find there. The identity of a conquered mind. I want to talk about what a person looks like when they've done this work. Not perfectly, no one does it perfectly. But genuinely. Consistently. They are not cold. People who have conquered their minds are not unfeeling, robotic, or emotionally unavailable. In fact, the opposite is true. When you are not drowning in reactive noise, you have more capacity for genuine feeling. You feel joy more completely. You connect more deeply. You love more freely. Because you are not using your entire emotional bandwidth to manage anxiety and suppress what you're afraid to feel. They are not unaffected by difficulty. Hard things still happen. Loss, failure, disappointment, betrayal, these are part of human life and they still register. But a person with a trained mind does not collapse under them. They feel the weight without being crushed by it. They grieve without drowning. They are disappointed without being destroyed. Because they have built an inner foundation that can hold weight. They act from values, not from moods. An untrained mind acts however it feels in the moment. An angry mind acts angry. A fearful mind acts fearful. A mood-driven life is an inconsistent life, unpredictable, reactive, difficult to sustain or build upon. A trained mind can feel angry and still act with fairness. Can feel fearful and still act with courage. Can feel uncertain and still act with conviction. This is not suppression. This is mastery. They are not impressed by the wrong things. When your inner world is ordered, the things that used to feel essential, approval, status, validation, the opinions of people who don't know you, lose their power. Not because you become arrogant or dismissive, but because you are no longer dependent on the outside to tell you who you are. You already know. This is what freedom actually looks like. Not the freedom from responsibility or commitment. Not the freedom from difficulty or pain. The freedom from being controlled by your own worst impulses, your oldest fears, and other people's definitions of your worth. This is what the Stoics called eudaimonia. Not happiness in the shallow sense, but flourishing. A deep, sustainable, internally generated sense of being fully alive and fully yourself. This is what is available to you on the other side of this work. The long game. I need to say something honest here. This is not a quick fix. The chaos in your mind was built over a lifetime. The patterns of thought, the habitual reactions, the emotional residue, the borrowed beliefs, these did not form overnight. They are deeply grooved. They are familiar. They will not dissolve because of one video, one book, one realization. This is the long game. And the long game requires something that our culture is deeply allergic to: patience with the process, grace for yourself during setbacks, and the willingness to begin again every time you fall back into old patterns. You will have days where the voice of doubt is the loudest voice in the room. You will have weeks where the chaos feels like it has completely returned. You will have moments where you react exactly the way you were trying not to react, where you spiral exactly the way you were trying not to spiral. Those moments are not failure. They are part of the practice. Every master of any discipline, musicians, athletes, martial artists, will tell you the same thing. Progress is not linear. There are breakthroughs and plateaus and apparent regressions. There are days where everything clicks and days where nothing does. What separates the people who master the discipline from the people who give up is not talent or natural ability. It is the willingness to return. To show up again the next day. To begin again without self-condemnation. Your only job is to return. Every time the chaos rises, return to the practice. Every time the noise gets loud, return to the silence. Every time the critical voice takes over, return to examination. Every time the reactive impulse fires, return to the pause. Return, return, return. That is the entire practice. What is waiting for you? I want you to close your eyes for a moment, or if you're driving, just let this land. Imagine a version of you where the chaos is quiet. Not gone. Not absent. Quiet. Where you can sit with difficulty without being overwhelmed by it. Where you can face uncertainty without collapsing into anxiety. Where someone's criticism lands and you can hear it without either crumbling under it or hardening against it. Where you wake up in the morning and your first feeling is not dread but possibility. Imagine making decisions from clarity instead of from fear. Imagine speaking from your actual values instead of from whatever the mood of the moment demands. Imagine being in a hard conversation and feeling the discomfort without losing yourself in it. Imagine knowing who you are clearly enough that the noise, the comparison, the judgment, the opinion, doesn't have anywhere to land. That version of you is not a fantasy. It is not reserved for monks or philosophers or people with some exceptional gift. It is the natural result of the practice we've been talking about. Built slowly, imperfectly, persistently. It is there. It is waiting. And every single day you choose the practice over the noise, you move toward it. The mind is the most powerful thing you possess. Not your circumstances. Not your connections. Not your talent or your education or your resources. Your mind. Because your mind determines how you interpret all of those things. How you respond to them. What you do with them. A conquered mind turns obstacles into information. Turns fear into fuel. Turns failure into data. Turns uncertainty into possibility. An unconquered mind turns every small obstacle into a catastrophe. Turns every fear into a stop sign. Turns every failure into proof of inadequacy. Turns every uncertainty into paralysis. Same circumstances. Completely different life. The work is not outside of you. The work has always been here. In the silence. In the pause. In the daily return to what is actually true. Conquer your mind. Silence the chaos within. And build the life that has been waiting for you to get out of your own way. I'll see you in the next one. Before we go any deeper, if this kind of content is what you've been looking for, I need you to subscribe to this channel right now. Hit the bell too. I put out deep, real, practical content like this every single week. No fluff. No empty motivation. Just the real work. Every subscriber tells the algorithm this matters. And if it's matching to you right now, subscribe. Let's build this together. If something in this video shifted something in you, if a single idea landed differently than anything has in a while, I want you to subscribe to this channel. This is the work I do here, every week. I want you to be part of this community. Subscribe. Share this video with someone who is fighting the war inside their own mind right now. They need this. And I will see you in the next video.